Thanks, Scarlett. Well, I'm joined now by two former members of Congress who know a lot about calling elections. They were also both there for the last Republican takeover back in '94. Both were members of their party's House leadership. Susan Molinari is with me here in D.C., served from 1990 to 97 as a Republican congresswoman from New York. Martin Frost served as a Democratic congressman from Texas from 1978 till 2005. And let me, Congressman Frost, start with you. The general wisdom is that things tighten before an election day, but I was just talking to another one of your former colleagues, Vin Weber, Republican from Minnesota, who said he's been out there and he actually wasn't seeing tightening. He's seeing things break in the Republicans' favor. What do you think?
Well, elections tend to get close at the end. Look, the Republicans are not going to take control of the Senate. They're going to fall short. They'll come close, but they'll fall short. Right now, things don't look great in the House for Democrats. If the Republicans do take the House, my guess is it would be by 10 seats or less. This is still a very contested election. A lot of turnout activities going on both sides, and the election's not over. It doesn't happen until next Tuesday.
Well, let's talk policy for a second, because obviously we know some of the priorities coming in. Susan, the Republicans have put forth this Pledge to America document. But when you go through the numbers, if you try to square it with the actual budget and the actual deficit, those cuts aren't in there. The big ones, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. What needs to be the thing that if you're Paul Ryan, the potential incoming budget chairman, you really take a look at?
Well, I think everything has to be on the table, and I think that's what the Republicans have said they're going to do. They're going to look at just about everything in order to restore some fiscal sanity to this nation. It is clear that the one thing that's uniting the Republican Party, the Tea Party, the independents, I mean, we're even working for the first time since I've been in politics with women voting for the Republican Party. There is no gender gap if the election were held today. And the overwhelming sentiment is around one issue, the economic issues. How do we get people back to work? How do we balance a budget? How do we not saddle our kids with deficits? So I think it's incumbent upon the Republican Party, when they get in, to examine all those issues, to continue to cut spending, not increase spending, to do what they can to downscale Obamacare, to stop the stimulus spending in order to create jobs, and to sort of reverse the transition. And that's what the American public is telling us.
Well, look, if we look at the numbers right now, Martin Frost, I want to bring you into this. We are looking, if these trends continue, at a Republican House and probably still a democratically held Senate. We haven't seen that much movement on big spending issues when we've had a democratically controlled House and Senate. So what do you do if you have two parties in opposition? Does that generate compromise, or does that just generate gridlock?
Well, the biggest example to look to is what happened in 1995 and 1996. The Republicans took over Congress. You still had a Democratic president. And in '96, both the Republicans in the leadership in the House and the Senate and President Clinton, for their own individual reasons, decided to compromise, decided that they needed to show that they could get something done.
Well, after shutting down the government.
Well, no, this is after the government shut down. That was in '95. Then when you got into '96, and I was chairman of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee in 1996, Newt Gingrich has said since the election that he was very worried that the Republicans actually were going to lose control of the House in '96. And so what they did was they moved to the center. Bill Clinton also was running for re-election. He moved to the center, and they compromised. And you got welfare reform, and you got an increase in the minimum wage. Now, whether the dynamics will be present for that to happen in the next 2 years is another matter, because these Tea Party folks who are being elected may not want to compromise on anything, and they may be problems for their own leadership. Also, you have the President's Deficit Reduction Commission that's going to make its report on December 1st. They will probably recommend both budget cuts and some tax increases. And the question is whether you can pass anything like that.
I've got to cut you off for a second quickly there, because I know we actually have the president coming up shortly. I want to get one last question in to Congresswoman Molinari.
The Tea Party are coming to restrict
compromise. That's the question.
The question is, I think that they're not going to compromise on reducing the size of government and maintaining the tax cuts that help to create and stimulate business. But where this came from, Martin's right. I was there. One of the reasons we were able to meet in the middle, if you will, is because President Clinton at that time showed the leadership to take on some of the liberals in his party to move closer to the center, to work with Republicans. We need to see if President Obama is willing to do that.